Hey folks, just a quick heads up that all episodes of the Film Nuts podcast contain heavy spoilers and some strong language. Nothing too crazy, but make sure there's no one with sensitive ears too close by. And if you like what you hear today, please consider becoming a patron of the show. You can find links to that page in the show notes, or you can visit patreon.com/filmnuts. Okay, anyway, please enjoy the show, and thank you so much for listening.
Ned, 10 is too young to see such things.
He won't be a boy forever. And winter is coming.
Watching Game of Thrones will teach you a lot about life, like just from the inner dealings that people have, the agendas that people may try to play, the people who try to stay out of the fray, and it's so lifelike in a medieval setting. I guarantee if you watch it, anyone, you'll find someone that mirrors your life or a journey that you went through in your life, or someone that you know.
Hi, I'm Taylor, and welcome back to the Film Nuts podcast, a show about why we love what we watch. How do you go about getting what you want? Hard work? Brute force? Kindness? Dragons? Mythical creatures aside, is there a right or wrong way to achieve your goals or take what you feel like you deserve? How do we decide which methods are best when it comes to winning? And do we treat our lives like a game to be won or lost? These questions are some of the core concepts centering HBO's Game of Thrones. From 2011 to 2019, the show left a huge impact in pop culture and enraptured so many people with its epic storytelling and its escapist fantasy. Now, full disclosure, of the 73 episodes of Game of Thrones, I have only seen 5 of them. So I can't in good conscience sit here and pretend to be an expert on everything that goes on in Westeros. Luckily, this show is not about me being an expert in anything. But for my guest today, Game of Thrones illustrated the many ways life can throw the unexpected in our way. Torin Dorn is a speaker, coach, and founder of Speak Victory, a motivational platform catered toward anybody who's struggling with the day-to-day. Torin considers the underdog stories and the life allegories the biggest attractions for Game of Thrones. Torin and I chat about the twists and turns of the iconic HBO series, the transition from college to professional basketball overseas, and how to live a life of purpose. So, be prepared. Winter is coming. Here's Torin Dorn talking about Game of Thrones on the Film Nuts podcast. How you doing, man? What's new in your life?
I'm good. Everything's new. Kind of in the transitional phase of life. So I'm good.
Yeah.
Taking it one day at a time.
Nice. So how are you enjoying being on the coaching side of things?
I love it. It's been a wild ride, a journey, and an eye-opening experience. But I love it. I kind of fell in love with being on this side of the ball. So.
Do you look back and think about your playing career now from a different perspective, now that you're a coach?
I do. I always kind of use this analogy of like being on a chessboard. I don't know if you play chess, but I kind of use the analogy like when you're a player, you're a piece on the board. So some players are knights, some players are rook, some players are king, queen, pawn, and so on. When you're a coach, you're outside of the board, controlling what's going on or trying to manipulate the pieces to work out in your favor. Sometimes you got to make different moves to set the other team up to do different moves. So it's a whole different level of gameplay mentally.
Yeah. Oh, I completely understand that. And that shift in perspective can lead you to come up with new ideas and stuff like that. That's awesome.
For sure.
So tell me about Speak Victory. How did it come about? Give me the elevator pitch about what it is, all that.
So Speak Victory basically for me was a journal that I kept when I first went overseas. I was lonely, first time moving out of North Carolina, and I just so happened to move to Poland. And new culture, new environment, not many people that spoke English, so I was just kind of alone, lost, trying to find my way. So I started journaling, writing every night, every morning. And then, I don't know, that was in August, maybe by Christmas time, I said, you know what, the stuff that was helping me get through, the quotes that I was coming across, the things that I was writing could help somebody else. So I made an Instagram page and just started publishing my quotes out of my journal. And then it just kind of evolved into me speaking and doing some voiceover work, and then doing voiceover work for other companies, and then speaking in front of crowds and trying to motivate people and kids. And it just kind of taken a life of its own now. So that was kind of how it started. I never thought it would get here, but it's here now. So we kind of riding the wave.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's really cool. Yeah, I've enjoyed seeing the posts and following all the inspirational stuff you have going on. Yeah, I'll just be scrolling, like having a weird day. I'm scrolling, and then that stuff comes up, and I'm like, okay, a little bit of a air floating me up. Yeah, it's kind of nice. Yeah. All right, so why did you want to talk about Game of Thrones?
Well, for one, it's probably my favorite TV show that I've watched over the last maybe 5 years. I'm not a big TV guy. Like, I don't watch too much TV. Like, I don't really have time to get into a lot of shows. But that was one of the shows when I had time, like when I was overseas. That was probably my favorite show that I watched throughout that time. So it was kind of a no-brainer when you asked for a TV show or a movie. So let's go Game of Thrones.
So you started watching it when you were over in Poland?
I think I started right before I left and finished when I got out there. I was late. I was late to the party. It had already aired by the time I started.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a cool. You took it with you,
right?
Because it was almost like something that connected you back,
right,
to your old world. So why is it something that is a favorite of yours? Like, what about it really spoke to you or appealed to you or at least entertained you?
Well, for me, it was, first of all, I really was drawn. Everybody talked about it all through college. Everybody's like, oh, Game of Thrones. But like, I just never pulled the trigger on it. And everyone would always tell me, like, I would run into people and they'd be like, oh, you're House Dorn. And I was like, what does that even mean? I have no clue what that means. And I started watching, and then something, like I was looking for a show, and that just kept popping in my head. Like, oh, you're House Dorn, Game of Thrones. So I picked it. And after like 2-3 episodes, I was hooked. It was really the storylines that got me, and the themes and the lessons learned throughout it. You know, my dream job before I ended up being a basketball player and coach was to be a filmmaker. That was my first dream job when I was a kid. I used to do videos and all type of stuff, editing, cinematography. Yeah. So I always look for, like, how would I have shot this? How would I have told that story? What within the story is a theme that ties to something else? And Game of Thrones just had that, so many different storylines within it. It was it kept you on the edge of your seat, and there were so many plot twists where you would fall in love with one character and then they kill the character off, or then you think it's gonna go this way and it goes the other way. You know, so I was kind of that's what kind of drew me to it.
You mentioned kind of the themes that were portrayed in the show. What kind of themes that were portrayed you really like connected with or identified or at least admired how they came across?
So one of like the underdog story for one, like Jon Snow's story.
Would you have done it? I've executed men who disobeyed me. You've also spared men. Thousands of wildlings when they refused to kneel. I wasn't a king. But you were. You've always been. I gave up my crown, Sam. I bent the knee. I'm not king in the north anymore.
I'm not talking about the king in the north. I'm talking about the king of the bloody 7 kingdoms.
From going from the bastard child to the heir to the Iron Throne, like, that was so epic for me because I feel like a lot of that I resonate with, the underdog story. And then even the Arya Stark journey, from her being the person who had to save everybody, but everybody doubted her. And then she goes and figures out what it means to be no one. And that theme of being no one kind of resonated with me too.
You told her to kill me.
Yes. But here you are. And there she is. Finally, a girl is no one.
A girl is Arya Stark of Winterfell. And I'm going home.
That's life. Like, that's what life is. Like, we all think that we have such a incredible presence in our small world, but in reality, like, we're all just running around in shells. And I kind of learned that going to Poland, because when I was in school, I thought that, you know, this is the world. Like, NC State is life. You know, when you're there, people know you. You're playing on TV. Da, da, da. So you think this is what life is, and you move to a whole other place, and nobody knows who you are. Nobody even speaks English. And then you're like, oh, wow, these people have lives completely independent of, they never heard of NC State, let alone seen a game or care about basketball or anything like that. So you kind of get a different perspective on life. And I think that's what resonated with me through the Arya Stark story, Becoming Nobody. So those two are probably the biggest two, I think, for me.
I gotcha. So what about, tell me about your underdog journey then.
Like, I wasn't a highly recruited guy. Like, NC State didn't offer me coming out of high school. I was a mid-major guy. You know, went to Charlotte first, and I only had three. I had three schools I chose from. It was Charlotte, UNCW, and Appalachian State, which neither one of those are huge basketball schools. You know, I always dreamed of playing in the ACC. You know, my parents went to Carolina, so that was always a thing. Like, just seeing that level of sport was what I wanted. So I didn't get that out of high school, and I always felt like I was overlooked, counted out, doubted, and just worked, and eventually, in a non-conventional way, ended up getting to the place that I wanted to go. You know, having to believe in myself through the doubt, through the struggle, through the trials, and come out on the other end, still getting what I wanted to get in the first place, but just had to go about it in a roundabout way. So that was that's kind of the synopsis of my story, being an underdog, you know. So that's that in sport, that was pretty much it. And then going to the pros, wanting to go to the NBA, getting to summer league with the Hornets, and not feeling like I got an opportunity that I wanted, and getting hurt, and then pivoting to it. Like, it's just so much, you know, that goes into that.
Yeah. Where, I mean, during the process of you wanting to get to an ACC school, or at least a big platform kind of school, like, mentally, how did you handle that? Like, were you always positive about stuff? Did you get down at all? Like, did you fluctuate? What was that like? Oh,
for sure. You know, my mentality now, and the things that I think that I'm teaching people, is how to overcome adversity through different ways that I figured out how to overcome adversity. It wasn't that I was always just positive and had a great outlook on my situations every time they happened to me. You know, I would get down, I would get sad, I would cry, I would hurt, I was angry. I took things out on people that I shouldn't have because of things that happened to me in different situations. And that's why I feel so passionately about speaking on it, because I've been through it, I've been there, and I know how someone may feel that's being overlooked, or that's going through a tragedy, or that's going through wanting something, having a dream, and it not coming true the way they wanted it. So I definitely wasn't always positive. My parents did a good job of keeping me positive and keeping me just aware of the work that it takes to get to a certain place. So I think I had a good foundation for sure. And my mom kind of was always a speak life into you type of person. And you can do anything you put your mind to type of person. So that kind of rubbed off. And I had some great coaches as well that kind of taught me things. And that's kind of where it came from. It wasn't that not that I was always positive or just, I call it like delusionally optimistic.
Yeah.
I think I am very, very optimistic, but I'm not afraid to like go through the mud and go through the pain and the hurt that comes with achievement.
So sorry for the interruption, but I will be brief. I am so grateful that you decided to listen to the Film Nuts podcast today. If you are enjoying what you're hearing, please consider supporting the show on Patreon. With a small monthly amount, you can get access to behind-the-scenes goodies, early access to full episodes, and you can vote on what movie we watch the first Monday of every month on the Nut House Discord. The Nut House itself is free to join and is full of other film and TV lovers, so you'll fit right in. You can check out info on all these things in the show notes. And if all of this sounds like a bit too much, that's totally okay. But if you want to keep up to date on all of our episodes, please be sure and subscribe on your favorite platform of choice. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and leave a rating and review so we can get in front of other awesome people like yourself. Okay, enough of me rambling. Back to the good stuff. So you talked a little bit about you before you got into basketball. You wanted to be a filmmaker. So, and you're making stuff. you're making content, man. You're making videos. So you've got the eye for it. Where do you think? Do you know where that came from, or like what drew you into wanting to make stuff?
So it started with like sports highlights and film. I would make, like when I was a freshman in high school, I would make highlight tapes for the senior guys before they would go to college. Like,
okay.
I think Ball is Life and like Hoop Mixtape and all the highlight platforms had just started.
Yeah.
And I started making highlights for people. And even like my teammate, my junior year at State LeVar Batts, like I made his first highlight tape when he was in like sixth grade because he played on the same team as my little cousin. So, yeah, just seeing it from a sports perspective and then learning to tell stories through that, like telling different stories with your camera, telling different stories with angles, with mood, with tone. And I entered into like video editing competitions in engineering. I took like engineering. I was in engineering academy in high school, and I would always do like the video production stuff. And me and this guy I went to high school with, we would put our it was always a competition each year where you make a film going towards a certain theme or pertaining to a certain theme, and you entered into this competition. I think the first one we ended up winning when I was in high school, and they kind of just sparked like, oh wow, this is really, really cool. Like I love to tell story from different angles and different, and just in different ways and unique parts of the story from a director's perspective. You know?
Yeah. So what you said that Game of Thrones, you got hooked like first couple episodes. What in the I'm going to admit, I am probably one of the few people on the planet that hasn't seen this show.
Cow.
I mean, okay, I've seen, before you and I agreed to do Game of Thrones, I had seen 4 total episodes. I saw the first 3, and then I ended up seeing the Red Wedding episode because my roommate was watching it.
Oh, yeah.
And then after we talked, I rewatched the first 3, and then I watched the finale just to see how things end. So within I just couldn't get into it. I think it's just me. It's just, I must be the crazy person because everybody in the world has watched the show and loved it. So what in those first 2 to 3 episodes, what got you really hooked into being invested, be like, all right, I'm in? Was there like a
honestly,
moment or a character?
I don't know if I can remember the exact moment that got me. Because I think the first 3 episodes were still kind of slow. I'm just into that type of stuff. Like I'm into like Greek mythology, anything like mythology and like history. Like history was my favorite subject growing up. So that whole thing it gave me those vibes. Like this is like Greek mythology, ancient, with the White Walkers, dragons. Like I love that type of stuff. So I think it was just that. And then when they pushed, I want to say it's when they pushed Bran caught
out of the window.
I don't know if this is the first. Yeah, they pushed him out of the window.
He saw us.
That's all right. It's all right. It's all right.
He saw us.
I heard you the first time. Quite the little climb, aren't you? How old are you, boy?
10.
10. The things I do for love.
When they pushed him out the window, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here for this. I got to see where this goes."
So it was like the twist, like the unexpected ending that you were like, "Oh, this can happen in the show." Was that what it was?
Yeah, like this is no holds bar. Like we're going for it in this. So I love that in shows.
That's cool. So I mentioned earlier that I watched the first like 3, and then I've seen the finale. But I know how things go because, all my friends watch it. everything is out there and on the internet about how everything goes. What is your opinion on how the show ended? Because that seems to be a topic of debate about if people enjoyed it or if they didn't enjoy how the show ended in its last season.
I think it kind of just ended. It ended okay. I think it could have been more of an epic ending or more complete, but I also feel like there were some other factors that played into that. Like, I don't know if they were planning for a spinoff or if they planned for that to be the end. Like, I don't know that. So when I look at it from a director's perspective, I have to think about those things. However, would I have liked to see it be more comprehensive at the end and more like, okay, this is how we close it and it's more epic, or a twist that we didn't see coming because it was twists and turns throughout the whole thing. And I feel like the ending was kind of a little predictable and it was kind of anticlimactic. I would have probably wanted to see a little more from there, but I wasn't too mad at it though. I was so invested. Like, I was so high on it. Like, you give me 7 good seasons of anything, like it's a great show, regardless of how it is. For me.
Yeah. It's tough to put together 7, 8 seasons of a show of that scale.
Yeah, exactly.
So with all those 8 seasons, do you have a favorite moment or a favorite scene or something like that?
Shoot, my favorite, definitely from my favorite 2 characters. So I loved when Arya, when she ends up being the one to kill the White Walker. And then when she avenges her brother's red wedding, like, those are my 2 favorite. She's my favorite character, and those are my 2 favorite moments of her journey from being a super underdog story, and then being able to be the one that saves everybody from the White Walkers, and also being the one to avenge her brother Rob's death from the red wedding, which that was super big for me, and just the things she learned along the way.
They weren't easy to carve. Especially Black Waldo.
My name is Arya Stark. I want you to know that. The last thing you're ever going to see is a Stark smiling down at you as you die.
And how, I don't know, she was just an assassin, and I love that. Like, she kept like a kill list of all the people that she was going to kill. And she would recite it every night. Like, she would say it over in her head every single night. And that's something that I did when I was a player, but not to that extent where I would say it in my head every night. But I definitely had a list of people that I was working to beat. Like, in high school, guys that were ranked ahead of me, like, I had them down on the list. Like, things that were said, like, I had this coach when I was a sophomore tell me that there was no ACC or Big East guards in the gym. And I was in the gym, and I went home and wrote it down, and I still have it at home now. I went home and wrote it down and dated it. So when I ended up getting to the ACC, like, I could pull it back out and say, yeah, like, on this date, they said I couldn't, and I did. Like, that, wow. Like, so I had some of what she had in my own avenue, in my own area. So that's probably my favorite thing for sure.
Do you think doing anything like that where you're like keeping a physical record of something, do you feel like that is a good motivational tool for people?
I think so, for sure. I mean, I write stuff down, like what you want. You got to be super clear and super specific on it and write it down. Those are the people that, because it was written down the other way. Like, somebody published it that these people are ranked ahead of me. So now, I'm going to write it down and I'm going to go track them down. Like, I think in sport, it's essential. And in anything, like, if you want to be at the top of any industry, like, you have to have a competitive streak. Businessmen, people that are really good in business, they're not there because they're soft. Like, these companies don't monopolize industries because they care about equality and, like, freedom of business for everybody. Like, nah, they want to be the best. Like, I'm gonna buy you. You can be under me. You can be with part of my company. I'm Amazon. I'll buy your company. Like, you can be part of Amazon, but you can't be in my industry and making noise without me coming to like see about it. And that's kind of how you have to be, I feel like, to be super duper successful in competitive industries now. So with sports, like, yeah, I feel like that was essential. And it kept me working. It gave me something to strive for. It kept me with a little bit of healthy paranoia, like, oh, these people could be working. Nah, I got to go back to the gym and get it again. I got to do extra reps.
I appreciate that perspective, but is there a point where you ever thought to yourself, I just have to be better than I was like yesterday? Is that also a part, or is that a kind of a different school of thought?
I think personally they go hand in hand, right? Because if I'm going to catch these people, I have to continue to get better than I was yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily, and I think that became with maturation. When I was young, I think I put a lot of stock into being better than others, you know? And now I feel like I put more stock into being better than I was yesterday. And that's a struggle now. This is not something that I'm just great at. Like, I still sometimes peek to the right, peek to the left, and see people, and I'm like, let me chill. Let me put my blinders back on and look right down the line where I'm going. But it's hard now because we're human. It's hard not to look to your right or your left because we have peripheral vision and we can see people doing different things. But it's a process to try as hard as you can and work at it every day. Like, that's why you have a routine. You get up, you don't get on your phone, you meditate, you read, whatever you do to center yourself and keep yourself on this path, you do that to try to block out all the noise. But the noise is still there and you still hear it sometimes. So I think for me, I try to marry the two. Like, I try to hear the noise and accept the noise as noise, but then find peace within that storm. Like, that's a storm. Okay, I'll find peace in the rain. Like, I'll be in the rain and be peaceful. Nothing wrong with a little water. You know, some people, it's storming outside, I'll stay in the house. Like, nah, I'll run out in the rain and be cool with it. Like, let's do it. Let's tango. So I think it's definitely a dance that you got to learn.
So what are you coaching to your players at this point with all the thoughts we've talked about right now? Like, what's a key message you're being given to your guys every day?
I would say, honestly, the same thing that we just said. Like, so for example, if you got a team full of players and it's only 5 players can play at a time, but it's 13 guys that want to play, you can say, okay, yeah, I got to be better than I was yesterday. But at the same time, I got to know my competition and know what I'm up against and know what he likes to do. So when I have to match up against him, that's the thing. You got to be better than you were yesterday, but you also have to line up against someone else in a competitive sport. So I can't just turn a blind eye to what everybody else is doing. I got to say, what's his move? What's his favorite move? Let me watch him. Let me study him so I can beat him. Not let me study him so I can be envied. Let me study him so I can beat him. So that's kind of the message I feel like I've been given the most is like, yeah, let's work to get better than we were yesterday. Let's be the best version of ourselves, but also let's study the competition. Let's study the people that we're going against so we're better prepared to face them when we have to go to battle against them.
Do you still have names or quotes on your list? And if so, how active are you in conquering those?
No, I don't necessarily have names that I'm trying to like conquer. I would say I have names I have an idea of people who I strive to be like.
Okay.
And I want to compete with those people. Like, and at the end of the day, this is what I learned through doing that. Like, when I was young, it was like, I want to beat this person. But as I got older, I learned that like my story is not the same as their story. Like, who knows what their story holds for them and who knows what mine holds for me. But there are people that I strive to be a little like, okay, so if you're the best, like, let's say I'm a speaker, I want to be the best at everything I do. So if I'm speaking, I want to be like Eric Thomas and Inky Johnson and those people who are at the top of that industry. And then once you get up there, it's not necessarily as much of a competition. It's more so like, okay, you have an audience, I have an audience. Like, how can we best impact people at this level? But I want to be able to impact people on that scale, like they are. So you kind of study them and say, okay, what are they doing that got them there? How can I implement some of that with how I do it, how I speak? I speak a little different. Like everybody has a different style. So how can I implement some of the tactics they use within my style to get me to that level, to where I'm having that type of impact? So it's kind of comparison on that level, as opposed to comparing to like try to beat them or take them over now in my life, or even in coaching. Like, who's the best coach that I know, and how do I take a little bit from him and be able to get to that level to where now I can eventually compete with that person and see who can win that chess game. Like, I want to play in the arenas with the best people. I want to box with the best competition in the world. So yeah, I got to look at who's the best, and try to chase them down, try to get a little, closer to them, so that eventually they'll speak about you in the same breath as they speak about those people.
I see. So if people have been living under a rock like I have, and you try to convince someone to watch Game of Thrones, how would you describe the show? What would be your pitch?
Actually, one of my mentors actually said, and it stuck with me, Game of Thrones is a lot like life. So if you want to see, if you love life and the inner workings of like anything, watching Game of Thrones will teach you a lot about life. Like, just from the inner dealings that people have, the agendas that people may try to play, the people who try to stay out of the fray. And it's so lifelike in a medieval setting. All of the stuff that happens, you can probably look at a situation in your workplace, in your family, in your business, and with your friends, that mirrors a situation mirrors a situation that happens in Game of Thrones. Just like my situation with sport, I can directly mirror a character in Game of Thrones. And I guarantee if you watch it, anyone, you'll find someone that mirrors your life, or a journey that you went through in your life, or someone that you know. It's very, very relatable.
You talked a little bit earlier about appreciating the underdog stories in it, but going off of that, what have you learned? What did you learn watching the show? Did you learn anything about life?
I would say expect the unexpected. Try to stay 15 steps ahead. They say chess masters stay 15 steps ahead of the game. We try to stay 15 steps ahead. Game of Thrones, like, there'll be twists and turns and little caveats that you don't see coming, but try as much as you can to maybe predict them, so maybe you can have a leg up on the people that you're going against, or the people that you're around. Like, you just never know what's going to happen. That's kind of the thing from Game of Thrones. Don't let power control you. Like, when your intentions are pure, like Jon Snow had pure intentions and he ended up winning in the end, versus all the people who didn't have pure intentions and you thought they were going to win, but then they didn't. But the person with the most pure intentions and that really wanted to help people and do that at the best way he knew how, and was extremely genuine, ended up being the heir to the Iron Throne, ended up being the king. So that's the type of stuff that, like, don't forget to be genuine and be pure with your intentions and chase a purpose versus chasing power, greed, money. Which everybody in the show that chased power, greed, and money ended up losing to this guy who just had pure intentions, and they all overlooked him and said he was a bastard child. He ends up being the king.
That's really good. Okay, the last thing I'm going to have you do, I need a Torin Dorn motivational speech. If I'm having a bad day, I want to remember something that you've told me right now. Like, I want to feel like I can. You don't have to make me run through a brick wall.
Yeah.
Give me some little positive affirmations.
No, I'll give you something positive. So, actually, I'll give you a story that I gave not too long ago. So, maybe 2 months ago, almost now, I lost my mom, and
I'm sorry,
she had I appreciate it. She had a long battle with colon cancer, right? And my mom is the type of person who, her whole life, just did good just for sake of doing good. Like, she She took my brother's phone for 3 months because he put lemonade in a water cup at Chipotle. Like everybody.
What?
Yeah. Oh, pissed off. And we're both like, yo, what? Because I was going to do the same thing until he did it and got in trouble. And she lost her mind. And I was like, I was really about to do the same thing. So I'm just like, wow, glad you went first. But it was just for sake of doing good. Like, that was the type of person she was. And she got stage 4 colon cancer with no symptoms the month before, right? So like August 2020, she's running around perfectly fine, going to the grocery store, cooking. It's COVID, so we're just chilling at the house. She's basically the only one leaving, going to the grocery store, coming back. And September, starts feeling sick, gets diagnosed. They gave her 6 weeks to 6 months to live. It had already metastasized to the liver. Unreal diagnosis. Doctors were confused. How did you get this far along with no symptoms? We're all confused, distraught, the whole nine. So she battles and battles and battles. And for 2.5 years, she battles. So she outlives her diagnosis by 2 years. Wow. Right? And me personally, it was super tough to watch.
Yeah.
But the thing that I learned from it was nobody's in life in a race to see who can live the most days. We're in life in a race to see who can be the most impactful with the days that they have. Like, her life was centered around doing good just for the sake of doing good. And even on her way out, she showed that and did that at the highest level. Every single day, with the energy she had, she was shining a light onto other people, even though she was facing the most adverse situation humanly possible, dealing with your own morbidity. So my message to anyone who's listening, my message to you is to live a life of impact. Like, find purpose, know what that is, and be impactful. Because when you go, the only thing people are going to remember is how you made them feel. Not what you acquired, not the car you drove, not the mansion that you bought, none of it. All that's going to go. All that's going to be sold. It's going to go to probate. Like, the only thing people are going to remember is how you made them feel and the energy that you passed into the world. Because this body is just a shell that we walk in, but the energy never dies. So keep good vibes, keep your energy right, and shine a light on somebody else, because it'll live forever.
I appreciate that closing message, man. That was great.
No problem.
I thank you for coming on to talk about Game of Thrones and life, apparently.
No problem.
A major idea that modern media are asking us to ponder is, what motivates us? What is our why? We see some account on Instagram or LinkedIn telling us we can make 6 figures with this one simple hack. Then we see a video on something like TikTok that's preaching minimalism and happiness and kind of how they're connected. We get pulled in all these directions, so it's really difficult for us to really figure out what is the best path for us individually. For me, I'm very much in line with what Torin is talking about. Affect those around you positively as best as you can while you're still able. But what about you? Do you have a motivating philosophy in your life? I would honestly love to know. So reach out on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at Film Nuts Podcast, or be sure to check out the Discord link to the Nut House in the show notes. A huge thanks to Torin for coming on the show, and a thanks the size of many dragons to you for listening. Please check out the show notes for links to Torin's platform, Speak Victory, for your daily motivation. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please, pretty please, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform of choice. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and leave a rating and review. It helps our little show get noticed by awesome people like yourself. If you want to help the show grow and want to get some really cool perks in the process, please consider becoming a patron of the Film Nuts Podcast. You can check out links to that in the show notes, or you can visit patreon.com/filmnuts. Our theme this season is brought to us by The Deep End. Our artwork is designed by Mondongwa Sibuhudi, and all episodes of the Film Nuts Podcast are produced and edited by me, Taylor D. Adams. If you want to get in touch, there's all those handles I mentioned before. Plus, please feel free to email filmnutspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you all so much for listening today. Now, here's to drinking and knowing things. Take care.